So the Iran bombing happened because Donald Trump ran out of patience. He's a transactional president. He gave the mullahs more than enough time to make a deal. They obviously were giving Trump the middle finger. Trump doesn't like that. What confused me a little bit was that he went from the White House to Bedminster, New Jersey on Friday. When he did that, I went, okay, there's not going to be anything over the weekend. Why would you do that? Go up to Jersey. And then he turned right around and went back to D.C. And I went, ooh, something happened there, and I don't know what it is. I will find out, but I don't know now. He got some intel, or Israel said something, but I don't know. I'm not going to speculate. I'm not going to guess. We do not do that here. So the history of this is that Donald Trump pulled out of the Iranian nuclear deal, which was engineered by Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton. Okay? That deal came together in 2015. Okay, so Obama signed it. The deal was essentially a bribe, $1.7 billion to the mullahs in cash. Those were frozen assets, and $400 million came on a plane in the middle of the night in suitcases. So what does that tell you? And in return, the mullahs said, okay, we're not going to try to get a nuclear weapon. All right. Now, when Trump took over in 2017, he charted, and I wrote a book, Killing the Killers, which you should read, all of Iran's cheating. All right, and then he blew up Soleimani, the head of the Revolutionary Guard. You know that, right? But he got fed up, and in May 8th, 2018, he pulled out. And I'm going to read you the Trump statement a little later on. Pulled out of the nuke deal. Britain, France, and Germany stayed in. Almost immediately, the mullahs said, all right, now we're going to do what we want because nobody can stop us. Britain, France, and Germany couldn't stop them. The United States could. And then the acceleration of the uranium began in earnest. It went from 3.6% under the Obama deal, that was it, to 60% or more, according to the United Nations weapons inspectors, who were then barred from going in. Okay. So when Trump got reelected, he came in, he said to the mullahs, you got to work this out. We'll have another deal. But this deal will be fair. And from January until Saturday, that's what the Trump administration tried to do. And the mullahs go, clear they were not going to make a deal. That is the genesis of this. Okay. In the meantime, the mullahs financed Hamas. On October 7th, 2024, Hamas came over and slaughtered the Jews. Hezbollah, Houthis, all Iranian money and arms, like this. That enraged Donald Trump. And they wouldn't stop. So you got nuke enrichment, you got terrorism, you got the mullahs giving the President of the United States the middle finger. What do you think is going to happen? Now, if Kamala Harris had been elected and her own people say this, she would have done nothing because Biden didn't do a thing. Not a thing. They're weak. Trump's not weak. Was it the right thing to do? Absolutely, yes. Will it work out the way that we hope? No one knows. Okay. Now, you heard immediately from the left that Trump needs to be impeached, that he needed this, the War Powers Act. Just give you some facts. 1998, President Clinton bombs Afghanistan, trying to get the Taliban and Al-Qaeda because they blew up American embassies in Kenya and Tanzania. 1999, President Clinton bombs Kosovo. Okay? Didn't have to, no national security. And for us, just bombs them because they were slaughtering people. The Kosovans were slaughtering people. That's two. Okay? Then President Obama bombs Libya. All right? In 2011. leading to Gaddafi's overthrow and death. Hillary Clinton was the cheerleader. Democrats said not one word on any of those. Not one word. Keep that in mind. All right. Now they're screaming War Powers Act. War Powers this, War Powers that. I'm going to quote from the War Powers Act. Officially known as the War Powers Resolution, sets a limit of 60 to 90 days for military deployments initiated by the president without a formal declaration of war or explicit congressional authorization. So Trump didn't violate anything. He's got 60 to 90 days to expedite this. There it is. Oh, no. Oh, we have to bring them up and impeach them. Two morons. I'll get to that in a moment. Ocasio-Cortez and this guy Kasten. Oh, my God. The worst is Schumer. Charles Schumer, the Senate Minority Leader. What a hypocrite. Okay? Here's what he said. Quote, "We must enforce the War Powers Act, and I'm urging Leader Thune to put it on the Senate floor immediately. I am voting for it and implore all senators on both sides of the aisle to vote for it." Chuck Schumer. Okay? Now, you got the window there. Schumer doesn't care. Wants to embarrass Trump. Here's what Schumer said, okay, in the run-up to Obama bombing Libya. Go.
"I think the president's handling it very well. Not taking a military option off the table, but being careful."
And then after the bombs dropped, Schumer didn't say anything. Supported it. What a blanking hypocrite. My God. Okay. Now, the Senate, the House Ethics Committee have got to call Congressman Sean Casten and Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. While our military people were in the air, they called for the impeachment of the commander-in-chief. Okay? They got to go up before the Ethics Committee. And I'm going to make sure that happens. So tomorrow, we're going to tell you who the chairman of the Ethics Committee is. We're going to call him. Try to get him on, but this has to go. You cannot, when you have military people actively involved in action, and you're undermining the commander-in-chief in real time, putting those people in more danger. Yeah, you could use the word treason. You never get a conviction on that. But I don't think that's an unreasonable word for these two. And they're both nuts. And I mean that literally. They are as far left as you could possibly be, sympathizing with the devil. They're wrong. All right, so within hours of the bombing, the mullahs, as I said, they've lost all faith. They're trying to desperately hang on. We're going to close the Straits of Hormuz. We're going to do this. We're going to do that. Now, there has been a reaction abroad, but I'm going to save that to the YouTube channel because I want to get into it in a more precise way. And I got so much to cover here on breaking news. So if you go to our YouTube channel, I hope you sign up. It's free. It's just an appendage of the No Spin News. All right, there it is, youtube.com/Bill O'Reilly. We will do an in-depth analysis of China and Russia and Europe, all of that. And that will be posted early this evening. Okay, so please sign up for that. Anyway, I get tons of letters. What's going to happen? What's going to happen? What's going to happen? I don't know what's going to happen. And anybody who goes on these cable shows, these idiot shows, and says that they're irresponsible. But I know that President Trump ain't going to back down. So it's in motion. If I were the Muellers, I would sign a deal as quickly as possible. Save your butt. Because he's not going to back away. Okay? And that's the memo. Predictably, we went over with Casten and Ocasio-Cortez. They're the fringe left. But the Democratic Party now is getting into real dicey territory. So a guy named Jeff Merkley, he's a senator from Oregon. He goes on CNN and says this. Go.
But the reason that that enrichment occurred is because President Trump, in his first administration, pulled us out of the diplomatic deal with Iran, in which they had huge amount of inspections, and every path to a nuclear weapon had been blocked through diplomacy, not through war. So it's unfortunate that Trump's decision in his first administration set the scene now for this challenge.
And that's the mantra now of the Democratic Party, that Obama was brilliant, it was a brilliant deal, Iran was constrained, and Trump just blew it all up, so it's Trump's fault. You heard that from Carville last week on News Nation. I'll be on News Nation at 9 o'clock tonight, but I told Carville he was full of you-know-what, which he is, because he just spouts the propaganda, which this guy did. So, but I want to go on a record with Trump. He issued a statement when he pulled out of the Obama deal. Here's what the statement said, quote, "In the years since the deal was reached, Iran's military budget has grown by almost 40%. True. After the sanctions were lifted, the dictatorship used its new funds to build nuclear-capable missiles, support terrorism, cause havoc. True. The agreement was so poorly negotiated that even if Iran fully complies, the regime can still be on the verge of a nuclear breakout in a short period of time." That's speculation, but that's what Trump believed. Okay, that's why he pulled out in his first term. So you can decide whether that was a wise move or not. But to say that everything would be swell with Iran if Trump had not pulled out of the deal is absurd. Okay, did you miss October 7th there, pal? Merkley, did you miss that? Ooh. All right, who dissented on the Republican side? Here they are. As usual, Congressman Massey, Kentucky, Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene, Senator Rand Paul, Steve Bannon, and Tucker Carlson. They're the biggest names on the Republican side who are dissenting. We have Eric Bolling tomorrow night. He is dissenting somewhat. Has to come up against me. So don't miss that. Europe, Europe is, I'm going to get into this on YouTube, but the only guy that really stood up is Starmer, the PM of Great Britain. And he said, yeah, we know it had to be done, but the rest of them are. Germany wasn't as weaselly as, but Macron was really a weasel. So we'll get into all of that. Stock market is shaky. It goes hour to hour. What can I tell you? That's why I told you 2 weeks ago, was it? You got spec stocks? Sell them. I did. I shouldn't give you financial advice, so let me rephrase it. I sold my spec stocks. It's too risky in this day and age. Dividend, big companies, long-time holdings, fine. Speculation, no. Looking out for you. Here's a story that was gone almost totally unreported. Pakistan is nominating President Trump for the Nobel Peace Prize. Why? Because you remember in May, India and Pakistan almost at war because there was a terror attack in Kashmir, and the death toll was 46. Okay, and they were shooting each other and all of that. It's the ethnic war. Trump stepped in and calmed it down. Do you know that? Did you hear this reported? That Pakistan's nominating him, the Nobel Peace Prize? I didn't. My astute producer picked it up. Okay. Joining us now from North Carolina is the purveyor of BernardGoldberg.com. And I checked that out. And I am very busy. So BernardGoldberg.com. I check in. So you say you support the action, but you're not a big Trump fan. So explain that to me.
It's not that I'm not a big Trump fan. My basis, I'm an opinion journalist now. But like you, I was a hard news journalist for a long time. So I come to my conclusions based on facts. So sometimes I agree with Donald Trump, sometimes I don't. In this case, I'm totally with President Trump. He did the right thing. Iran was never going to voluntarily give up their nuclear program. For decades, they strung one president after another, they strung them along. And they pretended that diplomacy was going to lead to Iran, the mullahs, giving up their nuclear dreams and passions. They made one big mistake, Bill. They assumed Donald Trump was like all the other presidents they were dealing with. Donald Trump was different from all the others, and he showed them how different he was on Saturday night. I'm totally with him on this.
So it doesn't have anything to do with Israel, and you're Jewish, right?
No, I'll tell you what it has to. No, it doesn't. But I'll tell you what it does have to do with. It has to do with risks being weighed against other risks. So is there a risk that Iran will do something stupid? Is there a risk that they may widen and escalate the war? Yeah, there's a risk, of course. Like you correctly said, if anybody tells you what's coming next, don't listen to them. They don't know what they're talking about.
Right.
But against that risk, Bill, you have to weigh the risk of a country run by zealot Islamist clerics having a nuclear weapon.
And they're haters.
And I'm not
haters and killers.
And I'm not taking the risk of them having a weapon like that.
They knew about October 7th. They knew that Hamas was going to go over and slaughter those people in the kibbutz. Iran knew. And that was really, I think, what put Trump over the line. Yeah, the nuke thing, obviously, you can't allow a rogue regime that is on the record as we're going to kill every Jew we can and we're going to kill Americans too, to have a bomb that they might be able to disassemble and give to a terrorist and set it off someplace. Now, you and I are simpatico, and I think we've made a very logical case so far. We're 19 minutes into this broadcast. But then you have the isolationists in the Republican Party who they don't care whether Iran has a nuclear weapon or not. That's kind of strange, don't you think?
I think it's immoral. I find it interesting that the isolationist wing of the Republican Party sounds a lot like the progressive wing of the Democratic Party. But beyond that, how is it moral to say, well, they won't put it in these words. I want to be fair to them. They won't say, we don't care that they have a nuclear weapon. As a matter of fact, they'll say, we don't want them to have a nuclear weapon. But if you're going to be an isolationist, then what you're really saying, what it really comes down to, is if they use it against Israel and kills 10 million Jews, Hitler only got 6 million, not our problem. America first, not our problem.
But it is our problem because, look, that's just such a sophomoric point of view. Just on its face, don't take the Israeli Jew thing out. So if you have a nuclear weapon that goes off on this planet anywhere, you set civilization back 10 years. Everybody is affected. Everybody.
So this gets back to my point about risk versus risk. They only talk about the risk of a wider war. Fair enough. That is a concern. But they don't talk about the risk that you just talked about and that I talked about in the column that's on my website. They don't talk about the risk of Supreme Leader Ayatollah Khomeini having a nuclear weapon. How could you not? You have to stop that. You have to stop that. And that's what Donald Trump did. And I'll criticize him when I think he does something that's not in his or our best interest, but I'm going to praise him when he does the right thing. And this time he did the right thing.
I'm trying to get inside the mind, and I will do this with Bowling tomorrow. Eric Bowling will be on, as I mentioned, of these isolationists because they're not dumb people. Rand Paul is not a dumb person, neither is Tucker Carlson or Steve Bannon. They're not. But I think it's a stubbornness now that's set in. And they get an awful lot of attention doing this as well. I think there's an attention factor here.
Well, I understand their concern. It's not just words, it's a philosophy. And the philosophy is we don't want to get involved in other people's problems, as if the United States is a bystander in all of this. And Iraq is weighing on all of this too. We tried to change the landscape of the Mideast once, and I don't think that turned out too well.
No, but it's a different situation than
Yeah,
Iraq.
But that's hanging over this whole discussion.
Yeah, but they're using that to make a false equivalency. So, I mean, it's like the Panama invasion compared to World War II. Iraq.
You know why it's an unfair comparison? I'll tell you why. And you know why. Because we're dealing with a nuclear bomb right now.
Right. It's so much more intense. And the Iraq situation was a miscalculation. I mean, those people say, oh, the government lied to us about, they knew that Saddam didn't have that. That is so much garbage. Saddam told his generals, all right, that he had the weapons because he wanted to intimidate those generals. And that's what the New York Times reported. And that's why it got out of control. Now, final question for you. When we're looking at the landscape here, I picked out a few people. And I don't like to do this. In my younger days, I did it more. But now I'm watching people attack other people personally for money. And this is what they do on social media. They attack people personally. They get more eyeballs, and they can sell ads. It's about money. Okay, that's why they're doing it. I think when I single out Chuck Schumer, am I being too harsh on the senator?
Well, when you said he's a blanking hypocrite, what word did you mean when you said blanking?
I don't want to shock you. I don't want to shock your sensibilities, Goldberg. But since you worked in a CBS newsroom for like 50 years, you've heard the real word before.
Here's the thing that gets me about Chuck Schumer. He had a perfect score on his SATs before he went to Harvard. He's a bright guy.
Yeah.
What a wasted use of intellect to become a political hack. That's my take on Chuck Schumer.
I sit there and does he think that guys like me are not going to trace him back to what he did when Obama dropped the bombs on Libya? And you have a totally different position. And then when you ask him about it, he'll never do an interview. He'll never, ever go, answer those questions. Look, Ocasio-Cortez, I said this on Piers Morgan. I went on his show tonight. And I said, look, I don't want to be uncharitable to a fellow terrier. So I have a degree from Boston University as well. But she's simply not smart enough to hold the job as a congressperson. She's just not smart enough.
You don't have to be that smart.
No, but she's not smart even at your low bar, okay? She doesn't even reach your low bar. That's the frame of reference that woman has. Zero. And I had to say it to put it into some kind of perspective. Like, for me to pick on her would be, like kicking a little Cocker Spaniel. It's not fair. Schumer, another matter.
I know how much you dislike cliches, and so do I. I dislike them as much as you do, but here's one. Donald Trump could find a cure for cancer, and she'd be opposed to Donald Trump for finding a cure for cancer. So let's not take her that seriously.
No, I agree with that, and that's why I didn't. But the other guy from Illinois, but they both should be brought up in front of this. You don't object to that, right? Health Ethics Committee, while we have people in the field, you're doing this?
I think no matter what your political philosophy, you don't do something that jeopardizes American military forces while they're in the midst of an operation. You don't do that.
It's just almost impossible to believe that these people are that stupid that they would do it. They didn't think about it. They just want to run out there and pander their far left base. All right, the website is bernardgoldberg.com. It's like BillO'Reilly.com, except my name is Irish and Goldberg is Jewish. Just
Right.
put the both names in, and then you'll get two good websites. Appreciate it, Bernie. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Bill.